Over the last decade, central Wisconsin has lost roughly 3,000 child care spots due to providers closing their businesses. And that's not even accounting for staffing shortages at centers.
That's according to one agency helping parents and providers in our area. And it's just a piece of the problem they're facing with this daycare dilemma. Our Emily Davies will be breaking down the issue in a series of special reports. But first, Emily, you had the opportunity to share to help with the building back of that workforce.
Yeah, typically we give you context and then we explain the issue before showing you the avenues in the community that you can use to help. But this opportunity is coming up tomorrow, so we're going to get to it right now. So tomorrow's event will help people learn more about the profession to become potentially a child care provider themselves.
It's really an opportunity, whether it is a parent that's looking to perhaps stay home with their child, or if it's an individual who has been caring for some children and is interested in becoming a regulated child care provider, somebody that's looking for a change in their career.
Gail Shizik works for Child Caring. It's the nonprofit resource and referral organization that helps parents find child care and provides supports for early childhood educators for 10 counties in central Wisconsin. She's hosting a 2-hour information conversation for people contemplating jumping into the profession of early childhood education.
What are some of the benefits of child care regulation and being a regulated child care provider, as well as the different types of regulation that's available in the state of Wisconsin? Share a lot of different resources and information that might help individuals make the decision if they would like to enter the early care and education field. And then share a little bit about some startup grants, some small startup grants that we have available.
For some, this opportunity shows they definitely do not want to jump into this field. For others, like Jeannie Art, a certified nursing assistant who struggled with finding childcare for her own kids, it helped her see a new path.
I'm glad that I did the transition because I knew that there was such a need for it, and I'm still caring for people, just a little bit younger than what I was before.
A few years ago, she got her certification and started a little race car daycare.
Certified was a little bit challenging to get started at first, and then once it's starting, then I wanted to be licensed to be able to help more families.
She's in the process to become licensed, working with people like Shizik to get everything set up so she can continue to connect with kids and their families.
I have one little kiddo that has came ever since he was 8 weeks old, and he's been here, and now he's almost 4 years old. So I told Mom and Dad both, I says, I don't know who's going to cry more, me or you, when I get him on the bus to go to 4K this year.
So this is not a profession for everyone, but this is a good opportunity for people to figure out some of that and, get your questions answered. We're going to have details for how you can do that right now at WSAW.com. And becoming regulated, there's a lot of hot button issues and opinions about that, but that's a story for a later time.
We have a special series called Daycare Dilemma starting tonight. What can we expect?
Well, we're going to just give you a big picture overview laying out the state of childcare in Wisconsin along with our local data. It's really complex, so tonight again is just laying out the issue, and then we'll be going and digging into all of those little pieces over the next several weeks.
Okay, Emily, thank you.
You can watch Daycare Dilemma every Wednesday night starting tonight right here on News Channel 7 at 10. If you're a parent or you know a parent, you probably know the struggle is real to find affordable and effective childcare. And it's been that way long before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. But the World event put a spotlight on that dilemma. In the first of a series of special reports, 7 Investigates Emily Davies begins by sharing the state of childcare in Wisconsin.
Say the words childcare and the personal stories come tumbling out.
When our daycare shut down, we went on all the wait lists, and when we called places, they would say, well, we have openings in 2 years.
I kind of kept on looking and looking and looking.
I'm still looking, but I don't have high hopes, especially with weekend care.
And it is like, hitting your head against a brick wall. How is this so hard? How can I be well-resourced and have friends and family and network and know people and have been to every child care center, and I still struggle to have consistent child care from week to week?
That's because accessible, affordable, quality options, the 3 elements of childcare that those in the industry say are necessary, are in short supply.
You can get 2 of the 3 of those usually, but the The thing we're trying to tear apart is how do you get all three at the same time? Because that is complicated.
New research results in Wisconsin give a window into the state of early childhood education and care. For researcher Dr. Alejandra Ross-Pallars, who is also a mother of a 4-year-old, it's more of a mirror.
It's interesting when your personal life and your research intersect to tell you the same message, right?
This map shows the supply and demand of childcare in a given area. Each spot is a household with children under 5. The color indicates the number of childcare spots within a 20-minute drive. The blue is a good sign. There are enough or nearly enough spots for the number of kids in that area, though that doesn't necessarily mean it's affordable, but we'll get to that later. The warmer the color, the more kids competing for each spot. About 70% of rural Wisconsin zip codes are in those warm areas and considered childcare deserts. Looking at February data from the Department of Children and Families, half of zip codes in Marathon County are in that bunch. For example, looking at Ringgold, there are about 95 children under the age of 5 per childcare spot within a 20-minute drive.
It doesn't seem like access is getting better for families in Wisconsin, and for some families it's gotten worse over time.
Over 15 years, Ross-Pallars says the overall supply of childcare providers in Wisconsin has only declined slightly, but about a quarter of family childcare providers have left the field. And that's the setting with the most diverse workforce and where the majority of infant care happens, where families with lower incomes, non-standard working hours, and families of color often find care. It's also the type of care that's most often available for families living in rural areas. But about 20% of family care providers closed in rural Wisconsin.
This is concerned that parents are leaving the labor force or potentially using less regulated, potentially lower quality childcare settings for their young kids.
These data only look at regulated providers and are largely from just before COVID-19 hit.
The pandemic has exacerbated an issue that was an issue prior to the pandemic, and now it's an extreme crisis, in my opinion.
Kelly Borkard would know. She's the executive director of Child Caring, the child care resource and referral organization for Central Wisconsin.
We were contacted by a traveling nurse who wanted to take a position here in Central Wisconsin and was looking for care for her baby. And we contacted over 70 child care providers to try to find a slot for this baby, and without success.
She says their service area lost about 42% of care providers over the last decade, which provided about 3,000 spots for kids.
It's difficult to keep teachers in child care centers because of the low pay and lack of benefits in the field.
Ross-Pallars' research found that despite the child care workforce having various levels of higher education, they get paid about 20% less per hour than the typical Wisconsin worker with just a high school degree. Family care providers typically make just above minimum wage, but they can't just raise their pay.
Parents can't even afford to pay the true cost of care, let alone just the amount that's needed to get by on a daily basis.
National data show childcare makes up a big portion of families' budgets. They're spending anywhere from 11 to 33% of their income.
You know, you work to pay your childcare, and then you don't have a check, and you still have to pay rent and electric and, you know, other things that the children need, and it's a big struggle.
And childcare providers have the same struggle, with Ross-Pallars' survey indicating that more early childhood educators plan to leave the field over the next few years.
When there's more turnover in the field, it's difficult for the teachers and staff who remain in the field, but it also takes a toll on kids. It's bad for their development. It makes it hard for parents to work. And this then in turn, right, makes it difficult for employers to find workers. It has ramifications for the economy as a whole.
Now, this is just touching the surface of a really complex problem, and it's really hard to find a solution because all of the different elements are interconnected.
And you're going to be getting into the nitty-gritty of those different elements.
Yeah, so we'll be breaking down the various scenarios that parents are dealing with, along with a look at those early childhood educators, both in the center base as well as the family settings, and explain where all of those costs lie. And we're also going to be looking at, what possible solutions are ahead, as well as what's being done right now. It's all a lot of coverage coming our way in the next few weeks.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Parents have a lot to juggle. Figuring out who and how their child is going to be cared for is among many of those things, and those decisions carry a lot of emotions. It's what 7 Investigates' Emily Davies is going to be talking about as part of the next piece of our Daycare Dilemma series. Emily, give us a peek into some of those perspectives, please.
Yeah, some parents have it easier than others. And what's interesting is after hearing from dozens of parents, a lot of them actually expressed a little guilt if they had an easier time. And they know how tough it is for other people. And certainly they don't need to feel guilty. It's safe to say that I think that's the hope for everybody, that their child care options are easy, but there are difficult choices involved. Does one parent leave the workforce to stay home with those little ones because for certain careers, their jobs don't pay enough to cover the cost of childcare, or parents just break even? Or maybe it's someone who wants to stay at home, but they can't afford to live on one income. Then there's figuring out where to send your kids, and it's not just about what the parents want.
Kids aren't willing just to go hang out with anybody. There's a lot of personal comfort that you as a parent need to have and trust, as well as the child.
But the lack of available childcare makes it tough to even have a lot of options to choose from. And I've heard from parents who have had to lower their standards for care, which is really tough because parents want the best for their kids, of course. So some parents who don't have enough childcare tell me it's like working 3 full-time jobs. You got to figure out, okay, where is my kid going to go for childcare over, maybe many months? 2, that caring for your own child and doing that care yourself. And then 3, actually going to work and doing that job as well.
So much stuff to juggle.
Yeah, incredible. All right, Emily, thank you. Now, you can catch a second story in our Daycare Dilemma series tonight on News Channel 7 at 10.
Emily, thank you.
The dilemma with childcare in Wisconsin and around the country is a lack of affordable, accessible, quality options, all while providers make little for the education they have and the work they do. Last week, we shared the latest data showing the state of childcare in Wisconsin and in our region. Tonight, 7 Investigates' Emily Davies begins to dig into the different perspectives. First, the puzzle parents must piece together.
I'll take a hug.
When a child enters the world, someone or several people have to provide care for them. For most families today, to say it's a challenge to figure out how that care is going to work is an understatement.
Childcare has pretty much always been an issue for us.
Where'd our ball go?
We heard from dozens of parents in north central Wisconsin weighing what kind of care they want with the realities of the current state of childcare. For some, it's the choice whether to stay home, sacrificing the income and potentially career opportunities too. For others, it's relying on family or their network to care for kids.
We don't really have any family here in the area.
For more than half of families in the U.S., they're figuring out how to secure quality childcare that fits their values and needs, that's physically accessible and affordable.
Really, it's more like what place has an opening, that's where you're going to be sending your kids.
The cost of our child care monthly is equal to the mortgage for our house.
Or it's figuring out some combination of all of these options. Not to mention the moral value and perspective each family places on how much direct care parents provide while raising their young children. Some want to stay home but can't afford to lose the income. Others who may want to continue working feel that with the high cost and lack of available care, that staying home is the only option.
We explored some options, some unsafe options, quite frankly.
Those just trying to get by in the season can sometimes add to the problems of low-quality care options.
We interviewed people that were doing childcare, and they were in similar positions. They were on maternity leave. They couldn't find childcare, so opted to want to do something in their own home.
Molly Adzik would know.
We toured people's apartments that weren't, no child-proofing, choke hazards, things of that nature. We actually started with a woman that only lasted a couple of days because it was very clear after day 2 that it wasn't a safe environment.
In addition to those options, she and her husband called every licensed or certified care provider in Marathon County. They had to alternate their time off and schedules, working in the middle of the night to finish their work while caring for their son during the day.
And I had so many sleepless nights trying to figure out what we would do. I cried to my boss, I cried to my friends, I cried to my parents, my therapist, anybody who would listen, because I just quite frankly didn't know what we were going to do.
Though full, they connected with one in-home provider and eventually got lucky. While the Adziks are now happy with their provider's care, the location isn't ideal, and neither are the hours.
We pick them up at 3:45 every day. I would typically be at work until 5:30 or 6. The beauty of that is I get out a little bit earlier. I get to spend those few hours with him before I do put him to bed, and then I can catch up on work after he's gone to sleep. So it's actually been a blessing.
For Nikki Waitula,
it's been a lot of
sacrifice.
She and her husband were able to secure care for their 3-year-old near their house, but have to flex their schedules to accommodate caring for their 9-month-old at home.
So he's at work right now, and he'll be getting home around 1 o'clock or so, 2 o'clock, and then I go to work.
They both work in Marathon County. This makes it tricky when the child care facility has to close down a classroom for being short-staffed or when there are sick kids.
It was almost like every other day they were getting sent home, and we'd get the call. One of us would have to rearrange our schedule for the day and come and pick them up. And then we'd have to figure out, okay, well, what are we going to do the next day?
Kelly Hammond,
this is my daughter, Nora.
knows the struggle too.
She is 4, and she's in her last year of daycare, and then she will be starting at 4K. And in her young life, she has been to 2 different daycare centers. You've been to 1 different in-home. You've had 1 nanny, and you've probably had 12 babysitters.
She now has 2 daughters. She's moved a couple of jobs to use family, friends, and neighbors to fill in the gaps.
It's really inconsistent, and I find that I spend a lot of time navigating, okay, what does next week look like?
She works part-time, but part-time care is difficult to find because providers then need to figure out how to fill the other days or times those kids aren't there. And we've only been talking about care during traditional daylight hours.
When you start talking about second shift care, weekend care, or child care for children with special needs, those are really quite difficult to find.
This is just a sample of scenarios parents face. Of the dozens of families in north central Wisconsin that we heard from, at least half considered leaving the workforce to stay home due to the difficulties with childcare. The majority who considered staying home ultimately did. At least half rely on family in some form, though many people said they don't live near family or cannot get family help easily. About a third shifted their work hours to accommodate covering for childcare gaps.
We want to go and go to work and be successful professionals, but this childcare situation that it's out of our control makes it really difficult for us to be successful professionals.
Our Daycare Dilemma coverage is far from over. You can find more details about the parent perspective right now at WSAW.com. Next Wednesday, Emily will share the provider's perspectives, why people leave the field, and why the cost of care and wages of providers don't seem to match up.
Results from a recently released survey find the vast majority of parents surveyed consider childcare as essential for their ability to work and an important part of their child's social and emotional development. The survey was sponsored by Church Mutual in Merrill, Mutual Insurance in Merrill. And as 7 Investigates' Emily Davies has learned, there are a lot of shared thoughts between parents and providers. Emily.
Yeah, so Church Mutual Insurance provides coverage for about 1,000 center-based care providers around the country, with plans spanning from $1,200 to multi-million dollars, depending on the size and needs. So they contracted a research agency to conduct its first insight innovative into the child care sector. The idea was to help child care providers to maximize opportunities and minimize risks. They surveyed 500 parents with young children around the country.
Their top 2 areas of concern are safety protocols and procedures of the organization and the organization's experience and training of their staff. And so what's really interesting about that is that that's also the same concerns of a child daycare director. That's what keeps them up at night, how to keep the children safe, how to keep the staff safe, and how to hire, train, and retain talent.
That's something we're hearing from centers as well, and research shows high turnover in the childcare field, in part due to low wages, because the costs associated with running a childcare facility, whether in a center or in a home setting, are high, insurance being included as part of that cost. Now, last week we heard from parents and what they're dealing with when it comes to the challenges with childcare, so we have the other side of that partnership coming up.
All right, thank you, Emily. According to research from the University of Wisconsin, about 70% of rural Wisconsin is considered a child care desert.
That same research found more providers are looking to leave the field in the next few years. As 7 Investigates' Emily Davies showed us last week, it's already hard enough for families to find accessible, quality, and affordable care. Tonight, she shares the provider perspective.
Do you need a hug?
Early childhood educators are generally very passionate and committed to their work.
Oh, it's definitely the kids. It's the best job ever because you get to come in here. Where do you get to go to work and have so many hugs?
You could have a horrible, horrible day, and they come in and you're my favorite Mona. How do you not be excited about that?
I was like, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to be a teacher, and then it just clicked and it made sense, and I enjoy it. Call me crazy.
Okay. According to University of Wisconsin researcher Dr. Alejandra Ross-Polares, more than 80% of child care providers in Wisconsin say this is the work they want to do. But her research is also suggesting high turnover rates in centers. About half of center teachers and about a third of family care providers say they plan to leave the field in the next 5 years.
We've sort of been relying on their passion for that work to compensate them with low wages and low benefits. But we see that that's really no longer working.
Wait, low wages and limited benefits? How does that work if care is costing families the equivalent of college tuition or mortgage payments in many cases? It's because families can't typically afford what industry experts refer to as the true cost of care. And the business model often largely or solely relies on families to cover business expenses.
They operate on razor-thin margins. They have other expenses. If they raise prices for families can't afford to pay more.
A lion, that's right.
Ramona Matthews not only runs her own licensed family care center in Wisconsin Rapids, she also has her own accounting business. So for her, calculating this out is simple.
Say you get $30 a day, times 7, $350, but you don't get that every day. Parents take vacations, there's spots that are open in between, things like that. With that money, we have to pay for our electric, our heat, our mortgage. Now people say, well, you already have electric, you already have heat. Well, I pay probably a good $100 to $150 more a month just for my electric because of where I have to keep my heat levels at.
State regulation requires that she keep her center's temperature between 67 and 80 degrees. It also requires a lot of laundry to ensure things like nap time linens and bathroom towels are cleaned regularly. Then there's insurance costs and all those costs for cleaning supplies, snacks, and meals for kids that come with their own set of rules providers have to follow.
My Walmart bill, which does include cleaning supplies, is up $400 to $500 a month. And that's got to come from somewhere.
Ross-Polares' research found that most family care providers make right around minimum wage, with center-based teachers making about $13 an hour. A lot of providers also report having food insecurities. About 1 in 5 center-based teachers reported it was very or extremely difficult to live on their household income, let alone pay for their own child care needs, like Heather Harriman, who started off working in a center.
And I was like, well, this is kind of silly to work at a daycare that you can't even afford to put your own child in.
All the while, the workers in this sector are well educated to ensure that they can help children develop individually, with continuing education requirements baked in.
Even just like understanding brain development, like when I started when I was 17, what they knew then and what they know now, so different.
And a lot of providers like Harriman want to get even higher education.
It's a slow process, just kind of little by little.
But more education doesn't typically mean higher pay or career advancement. She wants to do it to provide even better care, and that's costly too.
There is no one getting rich in childcare.
Kelly Matthews is with the Wisconsin Early Childhood Association. She says the business model for childcare, whether in-home or in centers, isn't like a typical business.
You can't just take more kids, right? It doesn't work that way. Whereas manufacturing, you might be able to ramp up your production in order to lower your costs. It doesn't work. That's not the model of childcare.
She says the ratio of teachers to children are in place for the health, safety, and development of children. Kids under the age of 2 count for 2 childcare spots. So it's more cost effective for providers to take kids ages 2 and older. It also makes it tricky when families want to keep their children at the same provider, which most providers want too.
It is a giant puzzle of birthdays and transitions and ratios.
Stephanie Daniels is the director of the Aspirus Weston YMCA.
If you're planning on having kids, you should just let me know so I can start penning them in for 2024.
It's one of the largest child care providers in Marathon County, with nearly 500 slots between the Weston and Wausau locations. Because they do more than just child care, they're able to get more funding streams than most providers and offer more benefits both to families and staff, which keeps generations of staff working here.
I followed her footsteps.
And makes increasing child care rates on families a little less painful with more willing parents. Even still,
the turnover is kind of high right now, but I would say heading into summer, I feel really good about where we're at. But again, that just could change.
She says they're competing with other industries entirely, like retail or manufacturing, that can pay better. And they pay more than most centers, which can attract staff from other centers or in-home settings, which only shifts the problem from one area to another.
As a community, every child care center needs to pay more and figure out a way to make this profession something that everybody, that they want to do, not just jump from center to center because they pay more.
People have to understand that this is very, very important, and if people believe that, they'll start to do something about it.
It's a complex problem, and we'll continue to peel back those layers next week on News Channel 7 at 10, looking at the lack of care options for children with special needs. And you can check out all of our past coverage right now under our Daycare Dilemma tab on our website, WSAW.com.
State and local data show there aren't enough child care providers for the number of kids needing child care in our area. For families with children who have special needs, finding care where they feel their child is safe and will have their needs met can be an even bigger struggle. That's the next topic our Emily Davies will be focusing on in her Daycare Dilemma series. Emily, what are parents and providers facing when it comes to this particular challenge?
Well, Jeff, both parents and providers want the best for these kids. But for providers, they may feel ill-equipped to provide the level of care those children with those additional needs deserve. There are laws in place that require providers to accommodate children with special needs in most cases. But then again, that doesn't mean the child will be in the best place to learn and grow. For parents like Samantha Brown from Merrill, it can require a lot of additional time and explanation when working with people who are caring for her child.
Leaving my child in care that I can trust somebody is a big one too. Like if I have family watch the kids, did he get his insulin? Did he get his meds? Making sure that everybody's on top of it and on the same page.
The need for more care options for children with disabilities is something we've heard from parents and providers themselves as well. We'll dive into the Brown story and some of the common things families like theirs face when trying to find care.
But there is a glimmer of hope to get this gap covered, correct?
Just a little one. We have a little solution that's coming our way shortly, and it won't fix the whole problem, but at least it'll be a few more spots for some kids potentially.
All right, important stuff. Looking forward to this tonight on News Channel 7 at 10. Thank you, Emily.
Finding quality, affordable, accessible child care around Wisconsin and our north central region is tough for a lot of families. It can be even tougher for families who have children with special needs. Our Emily Davies breaks down some of those challenges, the legal obligations, and opportunities in our Daycare Dilemma series.
How much things change then.
When Samantha Brown had her first child, Malika, and a couple of years later, Emerson, the certified nursing assistant pivoted her work schedule and the amount of hours she worked several times, leaned on family, and pieced together some childcare.
So I was paying about $200 a week for them to go to daycare part-time.
12 years later, those are framed memories, but she's still impacted by daily childcare needs.
I'm having a harder time now with childcare, with having a child with mental illness issues and being diabetic. He's type 1.
She has to be available at a moment's notice.
If there's problems at the school, I go up to the school. If he's not having a good day, so I'm mainly home, but childcare has definitely put a damper on working more.
This single mom is going to school part-time during the week so she can earn a degree that can provide more income for her family and be flexible to her son's needs. She works weekend shifts to accommodate that, but that doesn't alleviate her childcare problem.
Weekend care is really the biggest thing right now. And a lot of people that have work Monday through Friday, they don't want children on the weekends.
But Samantha says she feels regularly scrambling to find someone to care for her kids is about her only option.
We've had a few incidents where Emerson's destroyed something in the home, and I'm at work and I can't leave.
She hasn't stopped looking for formal care, but she's not very hopeful. Data from the Department of Children and Families shows 3/4 of Lincoln County zip codes are considered child care deserts, including its biggest municipality, Samantha's hometown of Merrill.
Especially with mental health and other, like diabetes, some daycares aren't educated or don't have the funding for the education for these providers to have. And then I feel like I'm stuck.
What the ADA requires is
equal opportunity.
Monica Murphy is a managing attorney with Disability Rights Wisconsin. She says under the Americans with Disabilities Act, child care providers, except for those run by a religious entity, cannot turn families away from providing care simply because a child has a disability or claims they don't have enough training to care for a child with particular needs. But that doesn't mean the accommodations will result in quality care for that child.
The child with a disability may not get an exactly equal benefit from a program, maybe in part because of their disability, or they can't process something, or they don't have the attention span, or whatever it may be.
Leaving my child in care that I can trust somebody is a big one too.
She's not the only parent we've heard from struggling to find care for a child with additional needs. It's something Carol Wesley,
therapy equipment for physical therapy,
the executive director of the Achieve Center in Wausau, has heard too.
The Achieve Center provides assessment, treatment, and support services to children and families with developmental disorders, chronic health problems, and physical challenges.
In 2019, they surveyed the families they served to see what other needs weren't being met.
Almost 100% came back. Child care integrated with treatment.
That need for more specialized care is something we heard from care providers as well. That's what Wesley found too.
We provide excellent care for children, but we don't have the tools and the personnel to be able to meet the needs that children with special needs have.
We first told you about their treatment-focused child care center in March.
Each child who comes to the Achieve Center will have their own individual treatment plan from licensed clinicians.
And the child care teachers will reinforce the physical, occupational, speech, or behavioral therapy through play. Now they're finishing up their basement renovations and hope to begin providing care for children by the end of the month.
Early intervention for these kids is just crucial.
They're only taking 30 children ages 20 months through 5 years old, which means there will still be a lot of families in need of care. Murphy's advice for families talking with care providers:
don't minimize your child's disability, don't exaggerate your child's disability. Identify what needs or what might be unique needs in the child care setting and make sure your provider understands that and is capable of doing that.
For providers, she says don't be afraid to get creative.
Kids are just kids. And if you're used to working with kids, you should be okay with a kid with a disability.
Like this 9-year-old who loves school, crafts, 4-H, and video games.
I think some people are afraid that kids with disabilities are more fragile or they're going to be more trouble or something like that. But I think it's all in how you approach it.
Leaving the space for all kids to get the special care they need.
I need this.
There are a variety of different resources and tips for both families and providers as to how to work together in care for children with special needs. We'll have links along with all of our past Daycare Dilemma coverage at our website, WSAW.com.
Children are born with fully developed brains. In fact, the most rapid growth happens in their first few years of life, which is why the type of care children receive once they're born is so important. Our Emily Davies joins us now to dig into that a bit as part of our Daycare Dilemma series. Emily, what are kids taking in up until they reach 5 years old?
Yeah, that's that time when they're either at home with mom and dad or grandma and grandpa or in a child care setting. So there's a lot of foundational things, you know, they're learning to be a human. So from when they're born until age 3, about 80% of their brain is formed. They're making 1 million neural connections per second. Those connections build the foundations for social emotional skills, academic skills, how the world works, and what are the best ways to handle the environment around them. One of the most important ways they learn that is through loving adults, whether parents or caregivers, talking and interacting with them.
I think that sometimes it's underestimated how often a child is being interacted with, both at home and in childcare. It's important for caring adults to be aware of just the power that they have to stimulate important brain pathways.
An organization called LENA does research and provides ways for parents and caregivers to increase that back and forth between each other in any setting. So some talking tips are: follow your child's lead, ask them a simple question that can include learning like counting or colors, describe what things do and how they work, and when you do that, pause and let the child respond, even if they respond with just a look or a sound. Here's an example.
We put mittens on so we don't burn our hands.
Yeah.
All right, will you make me a sandwich on this? Here's all the stuff that goes in the middle of the sandwich. Can you make one? All right.
Get my dough on.
Okay. I think I first one on my sandwich. I think I'd like something green on there first.
Okay.
So in that instance, you could even do that with your child with actual foods, like while you're making lunch, something that you have to kind of do daily. So simple tasks that you can fit in.
What are suggestions for babies who can't talk?
Well, you know, you can still talk to them or sing to them while you're maybe changing a diaper or changing their clothes. Well, I'm sure you probably did that with Cadence.
I did. A little poison.
Yeah. I'm sure she appreciated it. And this is, you know, all especially important right now because some of those Leno researchers are finding that babies born during the pandemic are actually talking less and experiencing less talk with adults compared to the kids prior. They tracked that prior to the pandemic. So really important things and might be contributing to speech delays as they grow up.
All right, certainly some important conversations to be had. Emily will be sharing more about the importance of quality care as part of her Daycare Dilemma series tonight on News Channel 7 to 10. Looking forward to that. Thank you, Emily.
Parents and early childhood educators want the best for kids, and there's a lot of research showing how important quality care is for these young minds.
As our Emily Davies has reported, there's a lack of quality care options in north central Wisconsin. She explains what's at stake and what parents and providers can do to improve quality.
You've probably heard the metaphor, a child's brain is like a sponge, soaking up everything around them.
Sometimes you think, well, what kind of education should a 6-month-old child have?
While they might not remember a lot from their earliest years as they grow up, there's a lot of science that backs up that comparison.
There is a tremendous amount of brain development happening, and in fact about 80% of brain development happens before the age of 3. It's mind-boggling.
Dr. Karina Norbaum says during that time there are about 1 million neural connections formed every second. Research over the decades has continually added to the weight of evidence supporting the importance of not only that period of brain development, but of the interactions between the child and adult caregivers.
Oh, butterfly busting? Like in the mid-90s when they were first doing some studies about the importance of language and parent-child interactions, there was maybe more theory behind that, but now, like with functional MRIs, you can see like which pathways are being lit up.
A lot of those pathways set the foundation for how the child knows to function in the world.
It has to do with cognition, social and emotional well-being, that little person on your shoulder that says, is that really the right thing to do right now? So these are all really important pieces to where a person goes in life.
That's why child brain development is part of the required ongoing education regulated child care providers receive. Why every element at a care facility, whether in home or in a center, has a purpose.
So the teacher is intentionally set up the classroom so no matter where they're playing in the classroom, they're learning something.
Especially during free play, we try to get them to work together so they can learn working on communicating with each other. We try to work with sharing.
And each child, even infants, has an individualized lesson plan.
We're teaching her to explore, to reach, to grow. She's learning to take things apart or put things back together.
Educators like Ramona Matthews,
what puzzle are we going to
do regular evaluations to ensure each child is meeting foundational milestones.
She's 2, she wasn't counting as much, so we then, like the puzzle that we bring out are numbers, or we bring out our number book or Cheerios where we're counting Cheerios.
There are countless studies looking at the impacts the quality of care has on children in the home and in the child care settings where children can often spend the majority of their day.
Vocabulary at age 3 is correlated with kindergarten readiness, which is correlated with 3rd grade reading level, which is correlated with high school graduation, which is correlated with having a job and steady income.
That's why there's an impassioned community of people in north central Wisconsin providing resources to help children build those foundational neural connections. In fact, the founders of the school software solutions company Renaissance in Wisconsin Rapids also started a nonprofit called LENA, which stands for Language Environment Analysis. It hones in on the importance of parents and caregivers talking and interacting with children early and often.
Simple things like respond to the child, follow their lead, pause, wait for them to respond. And their response at 6 months of age may not be talking back to you, but it might be just a look at you.
The LENA programs use technology to track the number of times parents or caregivers have back and forth interactions with a child and teaches them how to incorporate that in ordinary moments.
Camden, do you want this one?
Andrea Velasquez, who has been with Marathon County Head Start for more than 2 decades, knows this well.
We educate the whole child, so we look at involving the parents, so we engage with them as we teach them social emotional skills and academic skills needed to set that foundation for their future success in school.
Head Start provides care for a broad spectrum of families, many in some of the toughest situations. They do home visits to build relationships with families and children in their care and include parents as their most important teacher.
If you want them to learn and grow and do what you want them to do, they have to trust you and have to have that relationship.
They have at least one bilingual teacher in every classroom to help students build skills in their home language and English.
Even when we change diapers, if they're in a diaper here, we talk about what we're doing and sing a rhyme. Even when we're lining up or washing hands, we always make every moment a learning moment.
7, 8, 9, 10.
She says all of those techniques are working.
One little guy I had when he was 3, he started with me. He ended up reading before he went to kindergarten, and this year he graduated from University of Madison, and he was the commencement speaker this year, and he's going on to medical school. So, I'm just excited. It's just exciting to see.
She's talking about
Barney Schifferau. 0.45%. Those were the odds for my family to win a green card and have the opportunity to move to the United States.
His family immigrated to Wassa from Ethiopia when he was 1.
What if refusing to take a chance is the only reason that you're not living out your dream life right now? Looking back on that statistical miracle, I thank God every day that He has carried me to this point and that my family took that chance.
While not every child may face challenges like Barney describes in his commencement speech, quality care from loving parents and caregivers early on is something every child needs.
Goodbye.
As I mentioned, there are so many people in our area working to help families and early childhood educators gain the latest understanding of the science to optimize that intense brain development when kids are so young. We have links to many of those resources and programs, along with a link to Barney's full speech at our website, WSAW.com.
Wisconsin is in the middle of a workforce shortage. It's due to a variety of factors, but one of those big ones is that employees have been trying to manage for years, and that's the lack of accessible, affordable, quality health care. And as our Emily Davies has learned, area employers and workforce advocates are starting to talk about making changes. Emily, how does childcare impact employers?
Well, Jeff, the workforce under the workforce is that childcare workforce. So when they have issues, then that impacts parents' ability to work. So we've laid out the issues impacting providers with low wages and benefits and workforce shortages there itself, along with the creative ways that parents have managed a lack of childcare in our previous Daycare Dilemma stories. But how that dynamic plays out in the professional world is telling. Molly Adzik is Marathon County's Employee Resource Director and says sometimes the employees they have ultimately leave because they can't find childcare. She knows the struggle herself because for several months after coming off of maternity leave, she didn't have childcare and even now has to flex her schedule to accommodate the care she has. The same goes for people they're trying to hire.
I can't quantify who's not applying for jobs due to childcare, and I'm sure that number of those not applying is far greater, but we've had people who have applied and then ultimately not been able to start because they were applying for jobs thinking they would get one, they got one, thinking that they would be able to secure childcare, weren't able to secure childcare, weren't able to start.
And if you can tell, that's a true example of how parents are trying to manage working and caring for their child at the same time right there. And that's for parents who have the ability to work remotely. Many I spoke with say that's nearly impossible because their kids need a lot of attention, and so does their work. But then when you look at jobs that can't be remote, like we have 911 dispatchers, we have, corrections officers, they have to show up in person, and those are in short supply, as we've reported plenty on News Channel 7.
And with manufacturing making up a third of jobs in our region, that's a lot of people who can't work from home as well.
Yeah, so we got to do a lot of talks. Something the area chambers of commerce in our area say employers have to work on in order to attract and retain employees.
Just another thing area employers have to do. Emily, you'll be detailing all of that in our next story in our Daycare Dilemma series tonight on News Channel 7 at 10. Thank you so much.
Employers over the years tell me, our business isn't childcare. And I want to say you're wrong. Your business has to be childcare or your business is going to fail.
Employers and chambers of commerce members in our region are beginning to understand the impact childcare has on their ability to attract and retain employees. The workforce shortage in and around north central Wisconsin is apparent in our everyday lives. Between businesses limiting hours or closing and individual workloads piling up, there are many factors at play, but as our Emily Davies explains, the challenges with childcare is an underlying cause that's been impacting employees for decades.
I see what you got.
Whether it's a mom who's a case manager for youth in need of services.
And it's really distracting to try to talk to a teenager over the computer with a crying child. That's not realistic at all.
Can I get you a book to read?
A parent who works part-time.
That's not fair to my employer, right? That's not fair that I'm taking time out of my workday to make phone calls or, taking the brain space that I should be focused on projects.
Or the head of human resources.
I, at one point, really did start to contemplate the true reality of having to quit my job, which would have been just devastating. I mean, financially and otherwise.
Lack of accessible, affordable, quality childcare impacts you, your organization, and your community.
My girls are everything to me, and to know that they're safe during the day while I'm at work, that's everything. How could I focus if I didn't know that they were safe?
This childcare situation that it's out of our control makes it really difficult for us to be successful professionals. What, baby?
Molly Adzik, Marathon County's Employee Resource Director, sees this problem from both the parent and employer perspective. She has care for her son now, but went months without it, causing her and her husband to work constantly. She's not the only one.
I have an employee right now who is meant to return from a child rearing leave and has not secured care.
She sees the same problems reflected in the people she's trying to hire.
We've had people who have applied and then ultimately not been able to start because they were applying for jobs thinking they would get one, they got one, thinking that they would be able to secure childcare, weren't able to secure childcare, weren't able to start.
And the county employs a lot of people who have to physically show up, making remote work not an option.
You need a corrections officer to be in the jail, you need a 911 dispatcher to be sitting there with the equipment to take your call and get you the emergency response that you need.
So where are you gonna take all the sand?
And as we've laid out previously, childcare is complex.
It's the people who don't have children and don't understand, or the bosses of the world, and can't you just drop your kid off at childcare? Or they just don't understand it because they either don't have kids or when they grew up their wives or husbands stayed home. It's a different world.
When forced into those decisions, we know it has had a disproportionate impact on women.
That's the Department of Children and Family Secretary Emily Amundsen announcing some child care funding in WSAW. And there's data backing up her statement. A spring report from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics says mothers with children under the age of 18 participate in the workforce about 20% less than fathers. That is even more pronounced for mothers with children under the age of 6, with nearly a third of women not working when they have children in that age range. And even the parents who are still working, as you heard earlier, the quality of their work is often impacted if they don't have adequate childcare.
It is a choice to work, and that it's oftentimes not an option or even desire for someone just stay home. I love my job and I love my children, and I think it's necessary that our childcare reflects the modern family.
It's forcing people to make a really difficult choice. If they're qualified and otherwise available to enter the workforce or re-enter the workforce, they're having to choose between doing so or staying home and providing care for their kids.
Businesses, community organizations, and members of government agencies like Liz Brodek with the City of Wausau and Marathon County's Administrator Lance Leonard are beginning to listen and understand what their parental employees face.
We need to solve the issues that exist for all people, because regardless of sector, manufacturing, medical, agricultural, government, you name it, we all have unique challenges that are going to need to have unique solutions.
All parts of our North Central region have begun holding community conversations.
I literally watched all of my friends who now have children 6 and under discuss who's getting pregnant when, so they could continue with their child care facilities.
It's an extreme child care desert, and all of our colleagues over in Minocqua, they can't work. I mean, we had urgent care providers leave because there's nowhere to send their kids.
Their grandmas, their grandpas, and they retire early so that way they can stay home and watch the grandkids while mom and dad go to work. And that's something that you are losing, is you're losing that senior level of experience.
Child protection gets a lot involved, which is the field that I work in. There's a lot of reports about people leaving their children home alone or with inappropriate people because they have no option.
There's no silver bullet here. Everybody in this room needs to be part of the solution.
Government can't solve it all, but neither can business. We need to start seeing this as a community problem, and I think when we view it that way, we also realize that everybody has a stake in solving it.
And that's beginning to happen. Several community collectives in our North Central region have received grant awards to help work toward solutions. We have details about some of those awards at WSAW.com, and we'll be digging into some ideas in our communities in our series ahead.
The problems with childcare have been going on for decades, and the people in early childhood education world say the pandemic just made those problems worse.
So what's been done and what's happening right now to fix those issues? News Channel 7's Emily Davies is here to explain the past, present, and then give us a look into the future. So, Emily, what are you working on?
Yeah, well, as we've said, quality, affordable, accessible care is in short supply. And Wisconsin, and frankly, the country has been having this problem with recruiting and retaining people for a long time. And many providers and agencies that work to assist early childhood educators have said part of the underlying issue in getting these problems solved has to do with perception. There have been some state programs that work to address certain aspects of these problems, but funding hasn't always been there, or it's been decreased to the point where in 2019 there was a lot of advocacy on the problems with childcare, which led to research projects to understand the problems parents and childcare workers face. That's the data that came out within the last year.
Now, the good news is the amount of federal investment, the recognition through coronavirus relief funding that this industry is absolutely critical in helping get folks back to work. But it's a temporary solution to something that we need to solve long term.
The Department of Children and Family Secretary Emily Amundsen is talking about the more than $824 million federal dollars to be invested in stabilizing the industry. She says we're back to about pre-pandemic levels, but again, Wisconsin still had a lack of affordable, accessible, quality childcare then. So the amount of new programs and opportunities for communities coming out of that funding makes for a long list. We'll talk about existing help along with those new opportunities and what they could mean long term as we continue our Daycare Dilemma series coming up tonight on News Channel 7 at 10.
For weeks, we've been laying out the daycare dilemma across central and north central Wisconsin. And while the lack of affordable, accessible, quality care has been made worse by the pandemic, the problem has been going on for decades.
This begs the question, what's been done and what's being done about it? Our Emily Davies lays out the answers.
We've talked a lot about the true cost of care and the conundrum that comes with it. Often families are paying more than college tuition for childcare, yet that barely covers the provider's business costs and required ongoing education. So providers often have few or no benefits and low wages. Wisconsin has directed more than $824 million federal dollars to begin addressing this issue, but this sector hasn't always been prioritized.
Look at my sandcastle.
I love it.
This is not daycare. This is not babysitting. These are professional brain developers.
Yeah, I love that.
Children's care and development have always been important. Continued research backs up the significance of quality care too, but the general public's understanding of how important it is, along with the respect of the workforce behind that care, YMCA Director Stephanie Daniels says is still growing.
It's unfortunate that it took a pandemic to highlight childcare, but they understand, childcare was a need. There was emergency care needed.
And in fact, back in 2019 and early 2020, childcare providers across our state and across the nation were really sounding the alarm and saying, we're kind of on a precipice.
The precipice Department of Children and Families Secretary Emily Amundsen is referencing caused the state to invest in more research into the problems with childcare just before the pandemic hit. Ahead of that, the number of childcare providers has been dropping since the early 2000s, with a steep decline once the recession hit in 2008. That impacted a long-standing program that helps low-income families secure childcare in order to work or go to school, the Wisconsin Shares program. According to the research and advocacy organization Kids Forward, 7 years after the recession, the program lost more than 12,000 kids, and providers saw a drop of nearly $131 million coming through that program.
We've got, just massive underspend and massive underutilization of our Wisconsin Shares program.
That's Secretary Amundsen in WSAW just last month. While the number of families using the program before the pandemic is about the same today, the number of hours used in the program over the last 6 months dropped nearly a quarter compared to the same time last year, and it's still below the pre-pandemic levels. The Wisconsin Policy Forum stated this spring that decrease is concerning and suggests many low-income parents have not yet returned to work and are impacted by the access to care. Beginning this year, the state bumped up the share of the cost of care it covers from 35% to 80%, helping families to keep up with the rising cost of care and providers to get paid the true cost of care.
The historic pandemic investment helped us to close in on our pre-pandemic numbers. But of course, we know that where we were pre-pandemic was not working for Wisconsin families.
She's referencing that $824 million federal dollar investment. A sizable chunk of funds went to stabilizing the childcare industry, helping to keep providers open and survive the impacts of the pandemic.
Childcare Counts has been where we've put the majority of our money because it flows right into the childcare providers.
More than 300 providers in north central Wisconsin took advantage of that help, receiving more than $24 million in aid.
This funding that came out of COVID really has been huge, like a huge blessing.
The YMCAs in WSAW and Weston, the largest childcare centers in our area, received a combined total of more than $1 million. Part of that went to paying their teachers more without raising rates on parents.
We want to keep paying our teachers more because we're losing them to jobs that pay more, whether it's, corporate or even the school district, because they're paying more than we are.
That federal stabilization funding is available through next year, but there are other programs out of the larger pot of funding working to address other problems in the industry, like barriers for providing better quality care for children with disabilities and reducing or eliminating costs for people to become early childhood educators. But for now, the funding is temporary.
I understand folks' fear that one-time funding feels scary, right, when you're trying something new. We have to start somewhere, and I think the innovations that we've seen so far have not solved all the way through this.
Which is why some of that funding is going to new programs like Partner Up, where businesses and providers team up to provide childcare slots for employees with state funding assistance, and Dream Up, where diverse community teams receive strategic planning support to come up with local solutions to their specific childcare issues. Many communities in our area got those grants, as rural communities have been some of the most impacted.
We're having to look at things differently, and I think that's the beauty of this grant opportunity, is bringing everyone to the table to look at a problem from a comprehensive way and finding out what those solutions are.
I think if society looks at early childhood as really the backbone of America, because you can't go to work and do your job if you don't have someone to watch your children, and there's no reason that people should be quitting their jobs because they can't find childcare.
People from the local to the state level say government isn't the answer. There needs to be a braided solution with parents and the community too, which can make the government's investment last beyond this one-time burst.
When we can demonstrate that kind of success, I think we have a better chance of creating that long-term funding mechanism.
It's a lot of programs and opportunities. We'll have links to all of these at our website, WSAW.com. And there's more work to be done. We'll be talking about regulations next week as we continue our Daycare Dilemma series.
The book to start and continue operating a child care facility in Wisconsin is big. As the state and region look to solve some of the challenges, those rules are part of what's being examined. News Channel 7's Emily Davies joins us now. Now, Emily, providers and parents, they have lots of thoughts on changes. So exactly what are they talking about?
Well, it kind of depends on exactly the aspects of childcare that we're talking about and the regulations we're talking about. One of the biggest, most intimidating hurdles for a lot of people is just getting started opening a business, whether it is a provider who is still operating or someone who looked into it. They all have told me that the process can be a bit tough. Tracy Wise had a background providing care at a center during college, had some of the education through her bachelor's degree. So while she went into a different career field after college, once she had her kids, she thought she would be in a good position to open up her own in-home center.
Probably bit off a little more than I could chew, and which ultimately probably led to the decision, like, I can't continue doing this.
She got all of the way through the licensing process and decided to stick with her other career. We've got some lessons to share about her experience and what barriers might exist. Obviously, there are others who have stuck with it, but they have their own thoughts about changes. So one of the things that we've heard from nearly every provider I've talked with is the ratios of like child to teacher ratios, especially for infants, because they count for two big kids basically. So we'll explain what's on the table when it comes to the state's response to that and what kind of places where we could find solutions.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to getting the insight right from the policymakers. So please tune in tonight for another edition of our special Daycare Dilemma tonight on News Channel 7 at 10. Thank you, Emily. There are lots of rules when it comes to childcare in Wisconsin, and parents and providers have a lot of thoughts about them.
In our Daycare Dilemma series, our Emily Davies talks to the policymakers about why various rules are in place and what's on or off the table to make potential changes.
Where are you driving to today?
Just before the pandemic, Tracy Wise almost opened her own childcare center.
The thought process was, like, if I'm going to be home, I have the experience, I've taken the classes because I had worked in a childcare center in college, kind of thought like, oh, this should be easy.
Many in-home childcare providers start out this way, but Wise was even further ahead with a foundation in some of the education already.
Even though my bachelor's degree counted for some of the credits, it didn't count for all.
She knew she needed to update her courses and training from nearly a decade out of childcare, but
that was a little more than I was originally anticipating.
Then there are the requirements for the physical center. She reached out to her pre-licensing agent with child caring, but she still found the process tough.
They couldn't come do a site visit until your space was set up. But how do you know how to set up a space if no one's told you how to do it?
Childcare resource and referral agencies often have one pre-licensing agent covering several counties. Child Caring says that makes it tough to do more physical visits, but they encourage questions over email or phone because some rules are more complex than they may appear.
It's like the fence has to be 4 feet. Okay, so we called the fence people, then they come out and they're doing my site visit and they're like, well, you know, this part of the fence isn't 4 feet. Because it follows the ground and it dipped a little bit.
The fence is a big sticking point for a lot of people working to get their license because it can be expensive.
There is a permanent barrier requirement. The most common thing that folks use is a fence. But there's also other options that we have seen and have talked through about and problem solved with, such as landscaping.
The Department of Children and Families says a lot of communities who've been recently awarded grants have allocated money just for that requirement. But after spending the money getting her fence up to code and finishing the work to obtain her license, Wise found another piece that wasn't her favorite.
The unannounced pop-ins.
She says having strangers come in stressed out some of her kids. Child Caring says the unannounced visit are a common concern from applicants, but typically from an aspect that the provider just doesn't want somebody to come in and judge their home. And to that, they say they understand.
But when we choose to care for children, whether we're regulated or not, we're operating a business. That's where it goes back to what is the real purpose of regulation. And it's intended to protect children from harm.
Wise gets that. She says that's why she wanted to be licensed in the first place and why she sends her kids to a licensed facility. But that, among other things, caused her to reevaluate and ultimately not open.
I think there's more barriers there than there needs to be.
These rules weren't created to make caring for children difficult. They weren't created to make it expensive. They were really created to protect children from harm.
WSAW isn't the only person to express how difficult this process can be. It's why agencies like Child Caring try to provide as much support as they can, and why the state says it's looking to find ways to add more support on the front end. Of course, some providers continue on, and that's where we'll pick up after the break, looking at what ideas active providers have when it comes to regulations and what might be possible.
Between caring for kids, billing and processing payments, keeping track of continuing education hours and individual lesson plans, child care providers have a lot to keep track of on a daily basis. And for many providers, they're doing that all by themselves. News Channel 7's Emily Davies now is here to share some resources. Emily?
Yeah, Cassandra, how all of those requirements, paperwork and business administration pieces can be streamlined is a question I've heard a lot from communities throughout our reporting during these Daycare Dilemma series. Well, a software system developed in 2019 and constantly being improved and updated even as of this summer is working to help providers with all of that. The program is available through the Wisconsin Early Education Shared Services Network, which is part of a nonprofit advocacy and professional association for childcare providers.
We don't have we want you to look this way. We really want to meet them where they're at and to do that work alongside them so that they feel empowered to run their business, in the best possible way.
The network is not part of a licensing or the government, but builds relationships with governments and providers to help make sure that the legal requirements are being met and provider concerns are heard. That's why since it was developed 3 years ago, the network has been able to find funding to allow it to be mostly free, including right now. So there are a lot of providers that are aware of it, but some of the research that has been done in our state shows that not all providers are aware of all the programs that are meant to help them. So that's why we want to talk about that tonight.
Well, it sounds like a lot of people need that resource. So be sure to tune in to News Channel 7 at 9 and 10 for another Daycare Dilemma. Emily, thank you.
Throughout our Daycare Dilemma coverage, we've heard a lot about communities wanting to help childcare providers make running their businesses just a little bit easier.
Tonight, we'll share a system that's meant to do just that. News Channel 7's Emily Davies explains.
There's no one getting rich in childcare.
That's the word from providers, early childhood education advocates, and the research into the field. That research finds despite the challenges, this is the work most providers want to do as their career.
You asked why I like doing this. These make it worth it.
I do have another business, another profession that I do outside of this. My husband's like, "Are you ever going to give it up?" And I'm like, "Nope." Because I love it.
The research has also found that a lot of providers are unaware of some of the programs available to help them do their work. While some providers see themselves as a business and have strong business skills, others just want to care for kids and need more support with the paperwork and billing.
I think the complexity comes with the amount of different administrative practices that one person is juggling at the same time.
How communities can provide that support is a question we've heard throughout our reporting, and the Wisconsin Early Education Shared Services Network, or WSAW, is one resource that's been improving to help with that. Right now, it's free.
We want a program that is entirely responsive to the folks we're trying to serve.
The service has been around since 2019 through the Wisconsin Early Childhood Association. It's a nonprofit that advocates for early childhood education.
Online enrollment helps providers save time.
WSAW is meant to help streamline all of the paperwork, ongoing education, and even billing that providers have to keep track of and report.
They sometimes still have paper files, so that means every month they're literally filing through to see who needs that immunization, who needs that health form, checking their own file to make sure they have their continuing ed that they need. And they are the only person.
The day-to-day is that person is likely right now working in a classroom, cooking the food, driving the bus.
Just until recently for in-home centers, all of that tracking for the Department of Children and Families had to be done on paper. WSAW raised concerns with DCF and worked with a software developer.
They were able to basically take all of the required licensing enrollment forms and ensure that they met every single licensing requirement.
Parents can then sign up through the software. And the way it's set up, the WSAW co-directors say, helps keep more providers in compliance with state regulations. Parents cannot submit paperwork if anything is missing.
So in the past, there could be one place they didn't put initials or signature, and that could lead to a non-compliance.
They've also worked with a credit card processing vendor to reduce the cost for providers and allow them to take online payment from parents.
We firmly believe that if providers accept online payments, parents will pay more often on time and for the full amount. That's often a challenge when you only accept cash and check. If somebody has a fixed income and they're out of money at the end of the week, and you are the person that they pay in cash, you're likely the one that's not going to get paid in full.
They recognize not every provider is comfortable with computers generally, so they are happy to walk those individuals through basic computer functions.
Our goal is to have people using software because we just believe that automation, it's going to save you time because things are a click of a button versus an hour reviewing files.
Again, this is free for providers thanks in large part to federal pandemic relief dollars. There are 3 tiers of the program. The first tier is really information sharing. The second tier includes the first tier services and includes more hands-on assistance. The third tier is the most robust. It includes something providers have told me would be really helpful, full certified substitutes. Right now, it's not available in North Central Wisconsin, but it could be if communities here tell WSAW they'd like to make it happen.
So how do you make that happen? WSAW co-directs travel around the state when they're invited into communities, like the child care conversation that's happening in Merrill at the library this Saturday at noon, or the Regional Child Care Task Force Grow North. They will begin meeting next month. If communities say they're interested, WSAW can do a feasibility study to see if this would be something providers in that area would use. If you want to learn more about WSAW, we have details right now at WSAW.com. We've told you about the influx of money going directly to child care providers and resource centers to help keep the industry afloat. But that money is temporary. News Channel 7's Emily Davies looks at what that will mean for Wisconsinites once the funding ends.
Child care across our entire nation is paid for on the backs of working parents.
Parents and providers have poured out their hearts to us, illustrating this point. Unless you're the exception where your employer pays for even some of your child care, and even then, parents are paying amounts comparable to college tuition or a second mortgage.
We are all about, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, and you had those kids and you need to pay for them. But the bottom line is it's our current workforce, it's our future workforce.
Ruth Schmidt has been the executive director of the Wisconsin Early Childhood Association for 2 decades.
Prior to COVID, we were already in a crisis.
She calls childcare a broken business model that is impacting the state's overall workforce and economy.
Wisconsin as a whole puts about $16 million worth of state general purpose revenue into childcare. And if you calculate that out across the 320,000 children under the age of 5 in our state, it comes out to an investment of about $50 a year.
It's an alarm they've been sounding for years, but most legislators and businesses with the means to make changes haven't.
What was kind of holding them back with doing something about this?
This field is primarily women. And I do feel like there's a gender element to this discussion. What we heard from legislators is, we're hearing from people that work in childcare, but we'd really like to hear from business leaders. We'd really like to hear from parents.
As the pandemic hit, those legislators heard from those parents and businesses. $824 million in federal and state funds rushed to support childcare.
This funding that came out of COVID really has been huge, like a huge blessing. Being able to increase wages and not have to put it on parents.
We're going to be losing close to $200 to $250 million a year that this field has had over the past 3 years during COVID to help stand up their practices.
So if roughly $250 million is going away soon, what's it going to take to give everyone access to affordable quality care?
This is probably a huge political hot potato, but to me, it's publicly financing care for our youngest kids.
Think financing childcare like K-12 schools.
Economists have studied the return. For every dollar you invest in getting a child into high quality childcare, you save $13. Less incarceration, less remedial education needs, higher graduation rates, less rates of teen pregnancy. We've looked at all of these issues. We know the cost savings are enormous.
This idea of all day 3K, all day 4K for free for parents is very it wouldn't be really bad if that happened, because you wouldn't pay to come here. You would just go to your free 3K.
That was Stephanie Daniels from the Weston YMCA. Coming up, funding childcare like K-12 schools, or at least all-day 3 and 4K, is a topic of conversation among some policymakers and those in the industry. We'll be digging into that tonight on News Channel 7 at 9 and 10.
A rush of pandemic funding is helping to keep the child care industry afloat, but that money isn't a long-term solution to the downward trend in the lack of affordable, accessible, quality child care here in Wisconsin.
There's one conclusion many who see the full spectrum of the problem often reach. News Channel 7's Emily Davies explains.
We need over $200 million a year to invest in this field just to stabilize care a little bit.
Pandemic relief funds holding up many childcare programs in Wisconsin are set to end in 2023. Then the cost burden will go back to early childhood educators and parents.
Maybe it's not a business. Maybe it's something else. It's a public good. It's a public good. And I don't know why the cutoff for schools is age 5.
Funding care for children like K-12 education is a conclusion many people reach, but some providers have concerns.
Taking away 3-year-old classrooms and putting them in the district would be detrimental to child care centers. You wouldn't survive on infant and toddler care.
A big concern is if the care would be moved into the school district buildings rather than partner with centers. Child care providers can care for more kids ages 2 and older than they can children under the age of 2 due to state required child-to-teacher ratios, which means if centers are mostly caring for children 2 and younger due to free 3K, more center staff are required to care for fewer kids. It's expensive to provide that care and would cost parents of babies and toddlers more to keep those centers open. Then there's the care setting and how they would receive the funding.
You have to think about all the different types, from private to in-home to group center to Head Start.
The state has a quality rating scale system through Young Start. It provides more funding in general to licensed centers in the program than those that aren't licensed, and especially to those that have a 5-star rating.
The state can say, well, you're rated a 5-star for Young Start, so you get more than that center. Okay, well, had we not had this, I would have chose my rates differently. It's just, I am no expert by any means on what policy making in government looks like, but I know from just what I've read, it doesn't look great. There's a lot that could go wrong with it on our end.
Joint Finance Committee and the legislature.
As someone who helps create policies on this topic, Ruth Schmidt believes it can work, and there are other providers who have confidence it can work too. Schmidt says it would have to be a mixed delivery system where the public dollars follow the child.
Whether they want their child in a home-based family setting, classroom in a K-12 building, or whether they want that child in a group child care program or Head Start, all of those should be options and available for parents.
What I think we need to do moving forward is really start to explore and examine a system that brings long-term sustainable state funding into that equation. It's really very similar to how we pay for schools.
Department of Children and Family Secretary Emily Amundsen says state funding needs to be part of the solution. She talks about a 3-legged stool concept that includes the government, businesses, and parents paying for care.
Right now, the political reality of our country, I think, is if we could get to the point of it being a 3-legged stool would be really, really good, because often right now it's teetering on one leg, right, which is parents.
Schmidt says businesses have to be on board.
We need to understand the public good of this investment.
There are pros and cons for both approaches, but the call is something has to be done, and providers want input.
The only reason people need care for their kids is because they need to be out of the house working. The only reason they need to be out of the house working is because our state economy relies on parents being in the workforce. Everybody benefits if we can stand up a system of care that is funded in a more sustainable way than what we have right now.
Now, if you're thinking, what about the babies and the toddlers? Well, some say the system could fund care all the way down to the youngest Wisconsinites, but there has been also discussion about the importance of paid family leave, which Schmidt says could be another piece to the web of solutions, especially when early childhood educators take the philosophy that parents are their child's first and most important teacher.
Communities all over Wisconsin are brainstorming ideas about how to begin solving the complex challenges around childcare. Some people are looking at opportunities with their school districts, but there are certain funds that can be allocated toward that. News Channel 7's Emily Davies now joins us to explain what those are. Emily?
Well, Cassandra, there's something that's temporary in the pandemic era where we're in, and then there's a more long-term set of funding, and that's something a lot of districts in Wisconsin are contacting the State Department of Public Instruction about. We first talk about Fund 80. This is a fund all districts have access to, and what it does is allow the school district to exceed the revenue limits for a specific reason. This can be used for things like community athletics, things that new gym or a pool a school district may have, or before and after school activities, or something like childcare. The local school board has to have community meetings about it and vote on it. It's ultimately a local decision paid for by local property taxes. DPI's Director of Financial Services says a lot of school districts have actually used it to create 4K programs in the past.
I can remember in the mid 90s, specific programs for specific groups, but this is when we talk about Fund 80, Fund 80 needs to be something that's available for all students. It's by definition community.
The other pot of money is grants related to temporary pandemic dollars from the federal government. They're called ESSER funds, and they'll be available through September of 2024. The federal government requires the funds to be used for particular purposes, but one of those things it can be used for, if needed, is childcare. Now, we know of at least one school district in our area that is using those ESSER funds to be able to help with their child care needs. So we'll share that business plan and what the reopened child care center there is doing. Just opened this summer. It's a nice little story.
Now, you have told great stories through the series, but I understand that this is actually the last formal piece in the Daycare Dilemma series.
Yes, we have plenty of ideas for follow-ups, of course, so expect those. But yes, for now it is the last one, so please tune in tonight.
A lot of people are thinking this is some valuable information. Okay, so you can catch the last solutions piece tonight on News Channel 7 at 10. Thank you, Emily. A lot of people in Wisconsin are talking about childcare challenges. News Channel 7's Emily Davies found one community that's taking a multifaceted approach to help address at least one part of the problem. Tonight in our Daycare Dilemma series, she takes us to Anago.
Look at you monkeys! It's crazy to think that, once this was all kind of just an idea and a dream, and for it to be reality right now is it's incredible. It's crazy.
This space in downtown Anago needed a lot of imagination nearly a year ago. In October, this center, which was known at the time as My Little Angels, closed. Then 2 teachers from another child care center left. The Anago area lost more than 40 child care slots for families.
That had created a huge challenge for our businesses. Some of them were teachers. So those teachers were very panicked.
The Anago School District was one employer that was already facing another crisis, COVID absences.
We had a lot of trouble finding enough subs. So those teachers were really concerned if they didn't have a reliable and safe place to take their children, that they would miss even more work, and then what?
It's crucial to have both parents in our workforce right now, and in order to have that, we have to have adequate childcare.
Langley County Economic Development held community meetings to talk about what could be done.
Then enter Gabby Serrano.
Our daughter is 5 and our son is just turned 3. So through COVID, he lost his spot at the daycare center we were previously at. And that really opened my eyes to the lack of availability and options here in the Anago area.
This Burnham Woods second grade teacher with an extensive background in early childhood education had a dream of opening up her own center. This center closing was her opportunity, and she shared her dream with Angie Close.
A business plan is a key component to any business, but especially in childcare.
Close and Serrano brainstormed what they called the trilemma of childcare, keeping the expense for parents realistic, the compensation for early childhood educators fair, and the quality of the care high. Like most childcare centers, when they created the business plan, the expenses and the money coming in wasn't sustainable.
You have already a negative balance of $6,000 a month.
To help bridge that gap, they came up with a tiered plan, partnering with area employers to reserve childcare spots as a benefit to their employees.
Depending upon the tier, that business would receive a certain number of spots at the center and also a certain discount to their families.
They presented to the school district, and the district and school board jumped at the largest tier, reserving 10 spots at what was to become the Antigo Child Care Center.
It's a big sigh of relief, especially for those either waiting for a newborn or loving a newborn and just wanting to make sure that we can have both. An employee who can comfortably come to work, do a good job, and know that their child is well cared for.
Superintendent Julie Sprague says being in a rural district where attracting enough teachers is a challenge, she hopes this child care benefit will be an incentive to not only bring in good candidates, but keep the staff they have. Another business signed on to one of the lower tiers too, reserving 6 spots for its employees. While the need for all 35 slots she has available is there in the community, she plans to tweak the partnership plans in the spring.
We have pretty high numbers in each tiered spot, but rethinking the plan, most employers and their employees wouldn't need that many child care spots.
Between those partnerships, parent pay, and time-limited government grant dollars, she says she's been able to pay staff wages that are comparable to the state average and offer them insurance, which most centers can't provide.
Just making staff feel, appreciated and that they can be themselves and be in a supportive work environment is kind of the key to attracting employees right now.
She says long-term state funding would allow them to continue bridging that gap when pandemic funds end, so this dream can continue to come true.
Just hearing all of the laughter and the giggles and the joy and the excitement and seeing all of the smiles and getting the hugs and cuddles is priceless.
Serrano calls herself a dreamer and has lots of goals set to not only improve this center, but also start a summer program and open a second location eventually too. For anyone looking to replicate this model, she says budget high, meet with those community partners, don't be afraid to adapt and make changes, and most of all, ask for help.